Good morning. On Wednesday, we were talking about population. We started to get into population ecology. All right, so this chapter, we've gone from introducing what ecology is in terms of environment, ecosystems, etc., to how the environment affects what organisms and species are present in that area. All right, and now we're looking at how that population of organisms and species are change over time. Okay, and that's really what we're going to get into this. What we call population ecology. Okay, and then this is directly or part of that is demographics. Right, you've heard that term before when you talk about demographics. I'm sure reading newspaper articles, that is not something that is unfamiliar to you. All right, but demography is the study of the vital statistics of a population and how they change over time. Right, so the demographics of a population. We talk about demographics of the Springfield College population, students coming in, right? New student coming in, enrollment, students going out. Okay, graduation rate. That's demographics of a specific population. Okay, and a specialized population, if you will. Okay, we could talk about demographics of cancer patients, like women who are diagnosed. Number of women that are diagnosed with breast cancer per year. How many of them survive at 5 years? What's their 5-year survival rate? Right. So that's another example of demographics of a population. In terms of ecology, we're looking at populations of a certain area. We're looking at birth rate, survival rate, right? The rate of deaths. Okay, emigration, things that change the population over time. All right, so birth rates and death rates are all right. From that, we can talk about life tables. Life tables is sort of it's like an infographic about what happens over a certain species' lifetime or certain population's lifetime. All right, it's really a survival pattern of a population. Okay, so if we were to draw, say, a survival pattern of humans, what's the average life expectancy of humans? Somewhere around where? 75. All right, for men it's about 73, and for women it actually has gone up to about 81. All right, about 75 and 81. So if you said we were to draw a graph, okay, and on the x-axis we just put number of individuals, humans, okay, and we said 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 90, right? Let's do 10, 20, we'll say that's 40, this be 60, 80, 100. Okay? What's going to happen to the number of individuals, human individuals, that are alive in the United States? Right? So it's going to, the number of individuals somewhere, it might be that, whatever your, say, number of individuals at that age, okay, you say it might be something like that, and it drops off. Okay? But what's the problem with this graph? What's the problem with that graph? There are always new individuals coming in here, right? And there's always individuals leaving here. So can you get a real sense of the population by looking at all the number of individuals? Not really. So the best way to do that is by following what we call a cohort or a group of individuals that start at a certain time. Okay? So if we were to get rid of this graph, so let's draw another graph. Okay? We'll say people born baby boomers. You guys know who the baby boomers are? Mainly, probably people just a little bit older than your parents. Okay, or right. So if your parents were born around, right, some of your parents were probably born right around the early '60s, right? Some of them, maybe even late '60s. Okay, that is sort of the tail end of the baby boomers. Okay, most of the baby boomers were formed from 1946 to about 1964. That's sort of the baby boomer range. Okay, and what is the baby boom referred to? There were a lot of babies being born at that time. Why? End of the war. We had a period of prosperity in the United States, okay, and lots of kids were being born. All right, so population, so the boom goes up. So if we were to follow a cohort of baby boomers, say that were born between 1955 and 1960, okay, so 1955 to 1960. Now what is this graph going to look like? Their survival rate, number of individuals, survival at 10, 20, we'll just do 20, 40, 60, 80. What's going to happen? Most of them survived past 20, and then they probably dropped off, right? This graph gives you more information about survival than the other one, right? So the best way to go about looking at demographics is by following groups or cohorts, as it's called. All right, so this, what we basically did was a survivorship curve. It's a graphic way of representing the data in a life table. All right, so you see what a life table is in a second, and survivorship. All right, survivorship curves plot the proportion or numbers of a cohort still alive at each stage. All right. So another way that you use this in biology is to look at the survivorship of mice. Okay, it's commonly used in tumor biology. Okay, so we're going to look at the ability of a chemotherapy agent to kill tumors and increase survivorship of mice with pancreatic cancer. Okay, so what I do at this point, I have two groups. Okay, one in red and one in black. All right, in the black, they will have no chemotherapy. All right, so over time, all right, and then in red they have a chemotherapy given to them after induction of pancreatic cancer. All right, the x-axis is number of individuals, and the y-axis is the y-axis is number of individuals. X-axis is time after disease. Okay, so number of survivors. So in black, what's happening? They're dying, right? And in the red, what's happening? They're surviving longer. And why are they surviving longer? Because they have the chemotherapy. So what does this tell you? Is this a possible agent that will help to advance survival? Yes. Okay. So that's a survivorship curve that biologists use pretty routinely. All right. There's a couple, in terms of ecology, there's a couple different survivorship curves that can be three general types. Right? Type 1 is a low death rate during early and middle life, and an increase in death rates among older age individuals. Okay? And then type 2 is a constant death rate over the organism's lifespan. Right? And then type 3 is a high death rate for the young and a lower death rate for survivors. Right? But many species do not fit in sort of what these curves look like. I'm going to see what they look like in a second. So a low death rate during early and middle life, right? What did that mean for the number of survivors? High, right? So high survivorship, and then it goes down. Okay, so a survivorship sort of curve would be something like this. I'm just going to draw the curve. It would be something like survivorship would be like that. That's type 1. All right, type 2 would be, right, a constant death rate over the organism's lifespan. What would it look like? Ben? Right, it would be like sort of a straight line going down like that. All right, and then type 3, right, high death rates for the young and a lower death rate for survivors. That would look something like this. Right? So, those are the three that are sort of mixed in together. Right? So you have your number of survivors on the y-axis and the percentage of maximum lifespan, right, on the right. Right. This is not the y-axis is a little bit different in this picture, but there's your survivorship curves in this case. Okay, questions on survivorship curves? Reproductive rates, which are directly related to these survivorship curves. Okay. You have different rates depending on species. All right, and the ecosystem can, or changes in the ecosystem can alter these reproductive rates. Higher reproductive rates due to lack of predation, or lower reproductive rates due to drought, flooding, natural disasters, etc., can change, sort of alter your survivorship curves, right? So a reproductive table or fertility schedule is an age-specific summary of the reproductive rates in a population. So if you say reproductive rates among humans, really low beginning because what? Really low up until they're 10 because they haven't reached puberty, they're not reproductively mature, right? And then it goes up from there during the 20s, 30s, and even into the 40s where it drops off because of their reproductive cycle. Okay? Same thing. You have reproductive rates. You have animals that are seasonal breeders or that they are biannual breeders. All right? And the reproductive rates change. Okay? So what do we see here? Here's a reproductive table for a ground squirrel. All right? So during the first year, why is there no reproduction? Because they're not sexually mature. And then 1 to 2 years, some, right? So they probably reach maturity probably towards the end, right? Maybe 18 to 24 months, right? A year and a half to 2 years old. Then they have about 3 years, okay, of probably about year 5, right? Between year 4 and 5 are their most successful reproductive rates, right? So you have the mean size of litters, right? So they have high litters, high number, okay? And you also have all the females are weaning a litter. After that point, the average size of litters drops. They're still reproductively viable because they're all have litters, right? All the females have litters, but the size of the litter drops down from that point. Okay? Questions on that? Questions on population, demographics? All right, so the next part starts to begin our little math foray. All right, because we're going to talk about demographics, changes in population, and how that affects population size, and how we can estimate population size and changes in population depending upon the conditions of the environment, availability of resources, competition, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right? So we're going to study growth in both idealistic and realistic conditions. What is an idealistic condition? Thanks, Emily. Everything's ideal. You're a wordsmith beyond comparison. Okay? But it is everything that is going to be perfect for that population to thrive. Right? And we know that's different from reality because that's not, all those conditions can't come together at one time. All right? All right, so what we have is a per capita rate of increase. And population size changes based upon new individuals, right? Incoming input, whether it be due to reproductive rate or immigration, and depends upon death rate, right? A population size will decrease number of individuals that die or leave, emigration. Okay? So what you have here now is your change in population size is equal to births plus immigrants entering minus deaths minus the, whatever. So this is sort of incoming, this is outgoing. Right? If we ignore immigration and emigration, then it's just birth rate minus death rate. In order for a population to grow in size, the number of individuals coming in has to be greater than the number of individuals going out. Right? Okay. So, a growth rate can be expressed mathematically as a change in n, the number of individuals, a change in population, all right, in the population size, over a period of time. Okay? So, minus the birth rate and the death rate. Do you have this looking the right way in your thing? Yeah. All right, so it really equals birth rate minus death rate. When I transfer this from PowerPoint to explain everything, it changes the symbols for whatever reason. All right? So change in population over time. So what's going to happen to the population of geese that live in and around Springfield College? It's either going to go up or down. And if we just start, let's just look at the cohort that is out there right now. Okay? We tag all them and we watch what they do. Okay? We monitor them and basically that change in population size is going to be any new births, new incomers, minus the death rate. All right? Births and deaths can be expressed as an average number of births and deaths per individual during a specific time interval. Right? So number of deaths per year. Right? So B is the annual per capita birth rate. So what's the birth rate? They have 10 births per year, right? Right? And then your per capita death rate is the mortality rate, or M, right? Number of deaths, average number of deaths per year. Okay? We use this in terms of human population. We say the human population is still growing, okay? But we're reaching sort of a capacity. In the United States, if we said that there's roughly 370 million individuals, okay? And then with the United States having an average birth rate of 200,000 births per year. There's way more than that, but whatever. Okay? And we have an average of 150,000 deaths per year is that population growing or not? It's growing. Birth rate exceeds death rate, right? So that is ignoring people who are leaving or coming in. Okay, that's just birth rate, death rate. So population growth basically then can be revised so that you have the change in population over a period of time is equal to your birth rate, right, per capita, 200,000 deaths, or 200,000 births per year for the whole population, minus the death rate. Okay? X number of deaths minus. Right? So your per capita rate of increase is given, right? R is equal to your rate of increase is given by your births minus deaths, or birth rate minus death rate. So, given my example of in human population of the United States, 200,000 births per year is your birth rate, minus your mortality rate, 150,000 deaths per year. Your rate of increase is 50,000 individuals per year. Okay? When you have zero population growth, that occurs when birth rate is equal to death rate. And again, we are ignoring incomers and outgoers of the population. All right? So, zero population growth, birth rate equals to death rate. Number of new individuals are equal to the individuals lost. So, basically, now you can say that change in population size is equal to your rate of increase times the number of individuals. Okay? So if your rate of increase is, for the United States, is 50,000, we said was about 50,000 individuals per year, right? So your change in population, right, over the change in time is equal to this. So now if I said, this is for 20, this is a sort of a constant birth rate, and your population is 370 million, what's going to happen in 10 years, given a constant birth rate? Go up what? In 10 years, it's going to go up 500,000 individuals, right? It would be your rate multiplied by the number of years, by time. Okay? That's a T. There. Okay? Instantaneous growth rate can be expressed as the number of individuals at a specific time. Okay? And RINST, instantaneous, the rate that's happening at that time. Okay, so we talk about the rate over a certain period of time or an extended period of time or as an average over 10 years. Okay, or we can look at it at a specific sort of short time interval. All right, let's say we use the baby boomers as an example. All right, during that period of time in history, there were lots of kids born, right? So during that period, there was a higher rate of increase than previous periods, say during the Great Depression or afterwards, all right? So at that point in time, during that, say, 10-year, 20-year period, there were lots of kids born and their rate of increase was much higher than 20 years later. Okay? This brings us to what we call exponential growth. Okay? Exponential population growth is a population increase under idealized conditions. All right? And idealized conditions does not necessarily mean, you can't consider human population when we talk about idealized conditions. Right? Because the human population is in some areas, undergoing exponential population growth, even in what we consider non-idealistic conditions. Okay? But in these conditions, the rate of increase is at its maximum, right? And survivorship is also at its maximum. Okay? So, rate of increase is at its maximum, which means what? If we were to go back and tell me what's the rate equal to? Births minus deaths, right? So, if R is equal to births minus deaths, or mortality, right? What has to be the highest in order for R max to be, right? Birth rate is as high as it can go, and M is as low as it can go, right? So what you're looking at is reducing the mortality as much as possible and increasing births as much as possible. And that would give you your max rate of increase, and that is equal to an exponential population growth. Okay? Exponential population growths represent a J-shaped curve. It looks like, all right? So here's a population size, N, all right? And over the number of generations, there's your J-shaped curve, right, like this. This represents an exponential population growth, that extreme slope line, right? Why do we have a J-shaped curve here? Why is it low here? Why is it not just like that? What factors will you see here in this sort of first couple generations that are preventing that from just taking off? What might be possible? So maturity, population size at the beginning. Okay? So new individuals. All right, let's look at it like this. If I took invasive species, we talked about invasive species last week, where we took a Burmese python and put it in the Everglades. That's an ideal condition for a Burmese python to live and grow. Okay? At the beginning, first couple generations, it's not growing exponentially because there's a very small starting population. And there's a number of individuals they have to go out, and then they sort of spread out. Over time, now it becomes adapted to that area, that ecosystem, and then takes off and grows exponentially. All right, so that's an example of a idealistic. All right, that's why the J-shaped curve takes a little time to start. All right, this is also, you'll see this in bacteria growth in idealistic conditions as well. All right. It characterizes populations in new environments or even rebounding populations, right? For example, the elephant population in Kruger National Park in South Africa grew exponentially after hunting was banned. You remove the competition or the predation, you make conditions ideal, that population can thrive exponentially. Here's your elephant population from 1900 to, in the early 1960s, right? Your exponential growth occurs right about here is when, around, the 1950 is when hunting was outlawed. Hunting of elephants was outlawed in the national park. Okay, and it took off from there. Now, every ecosystem, okay, and the world in general, biosphere, has a certain carrying capacity. It has a limit of individuals that can be found in that ecosystem. All right? So, exponential growth cannot be sustained for long in any population. Why? Resources. All right? Resources. Let's look at a growth curve of a hypothetical growth curve of E. coli. Okay? So, here's number of cells, time. All right? When you start a culture of E. coli, you add a little bit of E. coli cells to a media. It's got glucose. You're going to put it in the right temperature. You're going to make an idealistic condition for that cell. Okay? So it's going to take a little bit of time, get acclimated, couple generations, and then what's going to happen? It's going to take off. Right? Right? And that's what we call the log phase. That's a period of exponential growth. Okay? Now, these cells are they're utilizing resources. Okay? They're competing for resources. The concentration of glucose is going down. Let's say, in red, this is your concentration of glucose. What's happening? Right? So what happens to the growth rate over here as glucose goes down? It plateaus. Okay? And then at that point, it actually starts to drop off a little bit. Okay? This is what we call the plateau or a stationary phase. Okay? The cells are using up the resources. So only for a certain period of time can that exponential growth be sustained based upon what's available to it in its environment. Right? Resources, predation, whatever it might be. Right? If you are in idealistic conditions where there is no predation and there's plenty of resources, a population will continue to grow exponentially. All right? For instance, what if I changed the way this was and I constantly added media to this so that the glucose was like this, always kept at that point? If that was the case, I could sustain exponential growth beyond. Right? If I always kept the resources available, incoming resources available. Okay? All right? So what that does then, it sort of sets a limit for that ecosystem. And that limit is called the carrying capacity. How many individuals can that ecosystem or environment carry? Right? How many can be supported by the environment? And this is dependent upon limiting resources. Right? Whatever resources are limiting the population. Right? So the logistic model of population growth, right? The per capita rate of increase declines as carrying capacity is reached. As you reach that carrying capacity, right? Limited resources, limited space available, limited food, rate of increase declines, increase in mortality, right? Your population rate drops. All right? So the logistic model starts with the exponential model, okay, where rate is at its maximum. Okay, and adds an expression that reduces per capita rate at a rate of increase as n approaches k. As you get closer to the carrying capacity, the rate of increase has to stop. There's not enough resources available to continue it. All right. Questions on population growth? All right. When you're thinking about population growth, you have to take into consideration reproductive rates, survival rates, mortality rates. Okay. So why is the human population growing exponentially still?
Because we're having a lot of births, but everyone's living longer, so mortality rate's down.
Mortality rates down, lots of births, and that's related to mainly related to medical technology, advances in medicine, right? We have developed ways to increase and the survivorship of births, okay? And then we've also developed ways to increase the survivorship, lengthen lifespan, right? So that some individuals are, living into their hundreds. It was basically assumed that the first person that will live to be 125 years old has already been born. That's where survivorship is going. I doubt it's going to be me, but you never know. I'll be around a long time, Nick, to harass you as much as I can. All right? Questions on population growth? All right. Think about how to apply that into situations. All right, we did a little bit of that today in terms of the squirrels, etc., human populations. Think about how you will apply that and figure it out in, on say your exam/quiz stuff. Okay? You have a quiz on Monday on aquatic biomes, and we'll finish ecology. Okay? A study guide will be posted sometime this weekend for your final.
Are all the videos posted?
All the videos I just posted this morning, I posted the other 2 videos. This video will also be posted sometime today.